Somebody across the street mentioned to me that these apartments, which have been shut down for the past few years, were notorious during their operation. At that time, they were overrun with unsavory characters, drug dealers, and criminals. It's a disturbing scene, one that brings to mind the troubling clowns I'll be discussing in today's video. They likely resided in this dilapidated place right here. The story I'm about to share is a deeply sad one. A young woman lost her life tragically, a victim of several individuals whose actions ultimately led to her death. What I can speculate is that this area is a hotspot for college students, given its proximity to Louisiana State University LSU, which is not far from my current location. Right across the street, there's a bar. The bar I'm referring to is called Fred's. Though it was previously known as Reggie's, this establishment is known to attract college students, including 19-year-old Madison Brooks, who visited on January 14th, 2023, to enjoy a night out. Having traveled extensively across the continental United States, I'm aware that laws can vary significantly from state to state. In Louisiana, for example, the laws around bar access can seem somewhat unconventional. Here, bars like Fred's, which was once Reggie's, allow individuals as young as 18 to enter. However, I've recently learned that Fred's has changed its policy and now requires patrons to be at least 21 to gain entry. In establishments like this bar, which functions somewhat as a club, patrons who are under 21 are typically given a different colored wristband compared to those who are of legal drinking age. This is to signify that they are not allowed to consume alcohol. However, on that particular night, 19-year-old Madison Brooks entered the bar using a fake ID, suggesting she may have done this before. It's unclear exactly what happened, but it appears that by the time Madison arrived at Reggie's, she had already been drinking at another location. The bar claimed they did not serve her any alcohol that night. However, it's important to note that she had been drinking heavily, way beyond what is safe. In fact, her blood alcohol concentration (BAC) at the time of her death was 3, which is dangerously close to the level where alcohol can be considered toxic. With closing time at 2:00 a.m., the bartenders were likely announcing last call, but where Madison's friends ended up is unclear. They seemingly vanished from the scene. It's possible she wandered off on her own due to her level of intoxication. While at the bar, she encountered a group of individuals. That night, Madison Brooks met 4 people: 28-year-old Everett Lee and 18-year-olds Cassine Carver and Kvion Washington. Among the individuals that Madison Brooks encountered that night was 17-year-old Desmond Carter. After meeting with the group, she asked whichever one of them was driving if she could get a ride home. She then got into their vehicle. Despite the fact that these 4 guys had no intention of actually taking her home, it was evident to them that she was heavily intoxicated. Even Carver, when speaking to the detectives after his arrest, remarked that Madison was unstable on her feet, struggling to keep her balance and unable to speak without slurring her words. After some time, she realized she was uncomfortable and attempted to leave the vehicle, saying, get out, I will Uber on my own." However, her attempts to express her feelings were brushed aside by the others, who didn't seem to care about her distress. Instead, they drove out of this parking lot. Dismissive of her plight, Carver and Lee sat in the front seats, while Carter and Washington occupied the back. In between them was Madison, who was evidently intoxicated. As they pulled out of the parking lot and turned right, their intentions became troubling. They seemed intent on taking advantage of her vulnerability. A leaked video from a scumbag defense attorney representing one of these individuals portrayed Madison Brooks unfairly. In this footage, she's shown in a negative light, using derogatory language towards one of the guys while she is clearly inebriated. Admittedly, her behavior isn't a good look, but it is important to recognize that she had too much to drink. Moreover, as an adult, one can easily see her diminished capacity to engage appropriately in that situation. Nonetheless, these individuals are aware of her inebriated state, yet they exploit it. They are not men. They are scumbags whose intentions revolve around finding a secluded spot to act on their vile desires. As Carver mentioned in a video that has not yet surfaced publicly, they engage in egregious behavior, which some might refer to as fun of raper, a disturbing slang that reflects the twisted mindset of today's youth. They drive into a parking lot, and for the next 20 minutes, they violate her. Kvion Washington is reportedly seen in the video pushing Madison down, while Desmond Carter removes his pants and assaults her. To obstruct the view from outside, they have placed something in the back window. To ensure that nobody could witness their actions, they had placed an obstruction in the back window. Meanwhile, one of the individuals in the front cranked up the volume of their favorite rap music, masking any sounds of distress. For approximately 20 minutes, they exploited her, ignoring her pleas to stop and her desperate cries of confusion and fear. Although I refer to this as an act of rape, Opinions may vary on the terminology used to describe such a heinous act. Once they were finished, they had no intentions of taking her home, fully aware of the crime they had just committed. Without hesitation, they left the parking lot and abandoned her on a random street. It was now 3:00 a.m., and rain began to fall, further shrouding the dark reality of their actions. They drive down Burbank Street, right across from the Pelican Lakes development. This is where they drop her off, and as she wanders into the road, it becomes the exact spot where she is struck and killed. These individuals are fully aware of their actions, understanding the gravity of what they have done, an act that is both wrong and horrific. In my eyes, they bear complete responsibility for her tragic death. By the time the next morning arrives, with the afternoon approaching, news of Madison's death spreads across Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Among those watching the news is a bartender from Reggie's, who instantly recognizes her. The bartender remembers her from the previous night and recognizes her face on the news. He happens to be friends with Cassine Carver, so he quickly reaches out to him, saying, "Hey, do you remember that girl from the bar?" He sends a link to an article about her tragic death. Cassine Carver, upon seeing this, realizes the gravity of the situation and responds with a panicked, "Oh crap." Instantly, he initiates a group message on Instagram or another platform with the other three involved. He tells them, "Okay, guys, we need to get our story straight." This raises eyebrows. Why would they need to clarify their accounts if they had done nothing wrong? The group begins sending messages back and forth, trying to figure out their next steps, knowing that as the investigation unfolds, the truth will inevitably come to light. Eventually, all four individuals were arrested. Specifically, Everett Lee and Casey Carver faced charges as accessories to third-degree rape, while Cavion Washington and Desmond Carter were charged with third-degree rape directly. In Louisiana, third-degree rape pertains to situations where an individual is too intoxicated to give consent for sexual activity. During the investigation, detectives uncovered a video taken by Carver, which depicted a scene of her yelling and being derogatory toward him in the back. As a result, all four individuals were promptly taken to jail. As of now, 3 of them have made bail, but Washington remains incarcerated because he was unable to post bail. He is also facing another rape case from 2020, which involves allegations that he raped a 12-year-old girl when he was just 15. This case carries a first-degree charge, indicating that he could be facing a significantly lengthy prison sentence here in Louisiana. However, the reason for his continued incarceration is that he has another rape case from 2020. Apparently, he committed this crime when he was just 15 years old, raping a 12-year-old girl, which results in a first-degree charge. This particular case could mean a lengthy prison sentence for him here in Louisiana. Now, let's address the uncomfortable aspect of this narrative. I believe it is crucial to acknowledge that race plays a significant role in this story. The fact that the victim is white and the accused individuals are black cannot be overlooked. If the racial dynamics were reversed, I might not have even learned about this incident. Considering the historical and ongoing racial divides present in southern states like Louisiana, to ignore these factors would be disingenuous. If you think race does not have an influence in this situation, then you are either misguided or not facing reality. When it comes to the defense attorney's perspective, there are a few points to consider. Firstly, I need to remind everyone that despite the despicable nature of these 4 individuals, they did not coerce Madison into approaching their vehicle. She chose to run towards them willingly, seeking a ride. According to one of their statements, Madison expressed her desire to either return home or visit a sorority sister's house. However, she provided them with 3 different addresses, and as they drove around trying to find her destination, they were unable to locate it. Ultimately, they decided to drop her off instead. They ended up dropping her off at a subdivision across the street in Pelican Lakes, since they were unable to locate the correct house. It was rumored that Madison was asked multiple times if she was certain about wanting to have sex with them, and reportedly, she gave her consent. This brings us back to the critical issue of consent. What it truly means to have a consensual encounter. Many of us have experienced similar situations, perhaps meeting someone at a bar who has had too much to drink. In those moments, we often find ourselves questioning, is this really okay? For myself, I recall instances from my younger days when I've been in that exact scenario. In that moment, I could see that she had definitely consumed more than her fair share of alcohol. At that point, I thought to myself, no, this isn't worth it. First and foremost, it's not a good look for anyone, especially a woman. When she's overly intoxicated, it's simply unbecoming. I consider myself to know better than to engage in that situation. However, I also recognize that those around her should have been more aware of Madison's condition. It was clear that she was significantly inebriated. She was very drunk. For example, from the video recorded at Reggie's, it's evident that she was ordering drinks right up until about 12:50. And in addition, she was partaking in drinks that belonged to others. This could potentially involve a young woman who, as many of us know, may need to limit her alcohol consumption. When individuals drink excessively, they often lose control over their actions. The defense attorneys are also raising another point regarding the blood alcohol content back level. In Madison's case, her BAC was measured at 0.319, which is 4 times the legal limit for driving in Louisiana. The attorneys argue that being in the range of 0.350 to 399 is indicative of alcohol poisoning. At those levels, a person is likely experiencing symptoms such as blacking out or passing out, resulting in a loss of coordination and control. When we talk about alcohol, it's clear that individuals react differently. Some of us can handle our drinks better than others. In fact, while I might get a little more talkative or say things I usually wouldn't when I'm drinking, I do mean what I say at that moment. It sticks with me. However, my experience with alcohol isn't universal. Others may take just one drink and become completely intoxicated, while some can down 20 and still drive home at 75 miles an hour without a hitch. The truth is, we all have unique tolerances and experiences with alcohol. Let me share my thoughts on this subject. People react differently to alcohol. Some might have just one drink and become completely inebriated, while others can consume 20 drinks and remain steady enough to drive at 75 miles per hour on the freeway, parking their vehicle safely in the garage. This discrepancy raises concerns about the defense's strategy. If their goal is to convince the 12 jurors in this case, they'll face significant challenges. The trial hasn't started yet, but once it does, it promises to be a sensitive and complex situation for everyone involved. As the case unfolds, it will be evident that they will attempt to counter any negative perceptions. They will attempt to refute any allegations that their clients are rapists, portraying Madison instead as a woman who made poor choices. Their strategy includes casting her in a negative light, making various claims about her based on hearsay. Ultimately, many individuals are implicated in this young woman's tragic death. Yes, it's clear that she should not have entered that vehicle. However, the adult involved, the 28-year-old Everett Lee, raises serious questions. At 28 years old, what could possibly drive you to associate with teenagers? It brings up the question, are you one of those individuals who, feeling out of place amongst your peers, seek companionship with younger people to appear more knowledgeable or sophisticated? You should have exercised better judgment, particularly knowing that this girl was intoxicated. Are you one of those individuals who struggles to connect with people your own age because of your geeky interests? Is that why you choose to associate with younger teens, hoping it might elevate your image and make you seem more intelligent? You should have known better. Man, you were aware that this girl was drunk, and it was your responsibility to ensure her safety. If taking her directly home wasn't an option, at the very least, you should have dropped her off at a safe location, like a convenience store. Instead, you surrounded yourself with individuals who are nothing more than creeps and losers, ultimately taking advantage of her vulnerable state. I genuinely believe that they played a role in her tragic fate. This is the final resting place of Madison Brooks.